I tell this all the time to members of Limitless Society. Sometimes you have to jump off a cliff and grow wings on the way down. You just have to. And you have to take that step, that leap of faith, and know that even starting a business is very hard. You're not going to know everything. You're not going to have all the mentoring and all the solutions to all the problems that you're going to face, but you still have to jump. And you still have to have the confidence that you'll grow that set of wings on the way down and you'll figure it out.
Welcome to another episode of the Deeper Than Dough podcast. Today we have Ryan Bacher. He's been a good friend and partner in the business. And we got our founder of Dirty Dough, Bennett Maxwell here. And we're going to dive into mental health, talk about a whole bunch of different things and get started.
Let's do it.
All right, Ryan, let's start with your background. And everybody knows you. Whenever I mention Ryan, you're the helicopter guy.
Yeah.
So that has to be
the helicopter guy
in the background story.
Well, I think that's just what that's my passion. So that's what I post about online. And, I love helicopters. Actually, it was at 40, I had this, idea that I wanted to fly a helicopter, and it's been on my bucket list forever. But there's a deeper story to the helicopter that deals with mental health that I'd love to share that not a lot of people know.
Let's start with that. Well, no. Before we dive into that, though, let's do like a. Right now, you do a bajillion things. You guys are crushing it with Limitless Society with Keaton Hoskins. You guys have this huge event coming up with. It's going to be like one of the largest events in business, right? Single day business events.
And good speakers.
Yeah, I mean, when Keaton challenged me to go out and find the best group of speakers, we looked at a lot of events, and generally events have 1 to 3, really high level, A-level speakers. We've got a dozen. And what's interesting about that is, of the 12 or so A-level speakers, it'll be interesting to see who shines in those, everybody would consider A-level speakers. So I'm super excited about it. September 23rd at the Maverick Center. It's going to be an all-day, Tony Robbins, drink from the fire hose type of event. And,
who are some of the speakers?
Well, so some of the more notable ones are Gary Vee, David Goggins, Ed Milet, Brad Lee, Russell Brunson, Tim Grover. I mean, just the list goes on and on and on.
Those are epic people.
Dan Fleischman, Keaton Hoskins. I mean, just some rock star speakers that are going to blow people away in all types of, material from personal development, business development, real estate, AI, networking. I mean, it's just anybody that is going to be there is going to be just blown away by this group.
Do we have a big enough venue?
9,500 seats to fill. It's funny, the other day I was at the Maverick Center and I was looking around, I'm going, how are we going to fill this? But, you bring in names like that, I think we're going to do it. We've already sold about 20% of the tickets and we haven't done any advertising. So we're ready to rock and roll. It's going to be awesome.
And this is through the Limitless Society, which is a mastermind group that you and Keaton are doing together to help entrepreneurs or potential entrepreneurs kind of break free and
and really it's
mindset.
Yeah, it's really 5 pillars: mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, and physical. Like we think that you have to have a balance in all 5 of those areas to really be successful. And if you look at people who are successful, they've mastered those 5 areas. And so we teach a variety of content every week in our breakout sessions and our weekly Zoom calls. But yeah, you have to have a balance in all of those areas. And, I know there's some crossover with mental and what Dirty Dough and their mission and the mission behind the mission. And so I have a real, I truly believe that having balance in all those areas really can help anyone.
I've been doing it since March last year. How many members are part of the society now?
About 1,000. So, and it's just growing rapidly, yeah.
And I've got a question for you, because you see a lot of people come through, like high performers. What's like the one thing that stands out to you from being on the top? Because I'm sure you've gone through a lot of these programs, but now coaching and mentoring. What's like a single variable amongst these humans that stand out to you?
I think a lot of it just comes down to knowing your why, what's your purpose, and then having this balance in all of these aspects of your life. I've seen my career when one of those 5 things has been out of whack, and it's hard to perform. It's hard to have a good work-life balance. It's hard to, be everything to everybody obviously. But if you have balance in all of those categories, you seem to be on track to be successful in whatever it is that you pursue. So,
and then you also had a little bit, one more background I want to plug in is the My Hearing Centers.
Yeah.
They grew, you guys grew that pretty rapidly, 100-something locations, had a good exit on that. And you were CEO for a time of that as well, right?
Yeah. So I spent about 20 years in hearing healthcare, whether it was, all at once or over time. But most recently, My Hearing Centers, we established that in 2011. I spent 5 years under a non-compete prior to that from selling my previous audiology business. So during that time, I dabbled in real estate and private equity and a bunch of technology companies. But we grew that from a single startup location to over 150 and exited that last July. So that was a great run. I'm going to stay out of that space now. I'm in cookies and coaching groups and racing companies and a lot of different stuff. But certainly
and
helicopters. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe that's
the transition.
The loop back to the helicopters and the larger story with the mental.
Yeah,
love to hear that
for sure. So one of the talks that I give is on mindset, and I have become an expert in the brain and how the brain functions by virtue of having an incident in late 2012. I had a really bad concussion on a motocross track in California. Jeez. Not a lot of people know this, but I wrecked going over a huge triple jump. One of the things that I wanted to do is really become a proficient in motocross.
Triple jump.
It's like a 90 to 120 foot jump.
You're crazy.
And as I was coming around a corner, and I didn't have any business being on this track, except I could ride. I was riding with guys that were much higher level than I was, and I probably was in the wrong spot. But I got bumped in the air over 120 foot tabletop, spun me around 180 degrees. I landed on the downside of the jump, cracked my helmet from ear to ear. I didn't lose consciousness. I stood up thinking there's 10 other guys going to hit me. And I just thought any moment I'm going to get hit. I thought, I had my wits about me. I had my balance. I just couldn't see. Anyways, fortunately, they stopped everybody. And my eyesight came back after 4 or 5 minutes, really came back, started to just kind of blend back in. But had a really terrible concussion from that. Had all the symptoms that you would expect for a couple of days and thought I was fine. Well, at 40 years old, or 39 years old rather, your brain doesn't recover as quickly as it would if you got a concussion at 12 years old in a football game, right? Yeah. So for the next year, I think there was some changes in my mental health. I couldn't quite focus and didn't really attribute anything to the concussion per se. But a year later, in California, in a skydiving tunnel, I had another terrible concussion. I hit the same spot on my head, upside down.
Skydiving tunnel?
Yeah, like I Fly. This is in, what is it, where they have Universal Studios, the Universal City. You got a skydiving tunnel there. Anyways, we're performing these kind of unique tricks, and I hit my head in the exact same spot. This time I felt like what was acid dripping down my neck. I felt like, something in my spine. I thought any minute I'm gonna, be a quadriplegic. Yeah. They stopped the machine. I got out. Again, I had these terrible concussive problems, and my life changed then. This is, late 2014. And slowly, but what happened was over the next year, I just struggled. I couldn't focus. I was struggling with depression. I couldn't sleep. I was, had anxiety, a lot of stuff I'd never had before. And I still didn't quite attribute it to the concussions. I didn't know there was anything related, because the concussion issues that I had were gone after a couple of days, headaches and blurry vision and, stuff like that, throwing up, obviously. But about 2 years later, I felt just did not feel like me. I didn't like going to do the things I used to like, Lake Powell, cycling, all these motocross, any of these things just kind of disappeared. I struggled at work, focusing. I found myself in a dark place, and I didn't know it had anything to do with the concussions. I actually went to a psychiatrist, saw him several, dozen times, and he's like, "Hey, you don't really have these issues we look for, these telltale signs. Have you ever had a concussion?" I'm like, "Yeah, I had 2 really bad ones." You're in the wrong spot. So he sent me to California to have my brain examined at a place called the Amen Clinic. It's like the foremost brain studiers in the world. They've mapped like hundreds of thousands of brains from people, normal people with Alzheimer's, drug addicts, car accident victims, and they can see exactly what's happening electrically in your brain. It's a really unique process. They inject you with a radioisotope, put you in a CAT scan, and make you solve math problems and like kind of an IQ test. And they watch this radioisotope lights up on the CAT scan when there's an electrical signal happening in your brain where all this activity is. And so they can map it and see kind of what's going on. And as soon as I got out, they're like, yeah, your brain is messed up. And they showed me my brain compared to someone with normal activity at my same age. And you could see a drastic difference. Oddly enough, when I wasn't wanting to think, my brain would start firing. And when I was wanting to think, it would shut down. So no wonder I was struggling, At the time, the doctors were like, well, if you're depressed, take this medication. And if you can't sleep, take this medication. If you have anxiety, take this medication. I'm like, no, I'm not this person. What is wrong? I wanted to know what the root problem was. Yeah. So at least now I had this knowledge that it wasn't, I finally knew what was wrong. Yeah. And then started the second cycle of my process, which was trying to find treatment. And I had all the, sort of things I think a lot of people with mental health struggle with, even.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
When they gave you the diagnosis, like what was going through your mind?
Oh, I was super empowered. I was like, okay, like finally someone has told me what's wrong, and it's not just me, and I'm not having a midlife crisis, and there's actually an issue.
Cool.
And so that was super empowering. But at the same time, I was like, well, now what? But at least having that knowledge, it set me forth on the next phase of my, trying to understand what's going on. Is how do I solve this, And at the time, the sad thing is that the movie Concussion came out. If you have ever seen that movie, I thought, am I going to end up, am I going to end up like Dave Mirra, who shot himself in the chest? Yeah. Because he's like, something's wrong with me. I'm going to preserve my brain so you all can see post-mortem that something was wrong with me. Or Junior Seau. They intentionally, obviously killed themselves, but they did it in a certain way to basically hopefully have someone understand after they were passed away, that there was something wrong. And sure enough, there was. They had, CTE. So I struggled with that. I'm like, is this my fate? I felt some of those symptoms. I felt very, lonely and didn't have anybody that could sort of like commiserate with me. And it was still a very dark time of my life. The bright side is after years of chasing around NFL Concussion Center and treatments here or there, like all over I would have gone to Tibet and stood on my head and drank lotus tea if that's what they told me would have solved the problem. I was vigilant about getting this fixed once I knew there was a problem.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah,
on top
absolutely.
Of that? Like at this point in your life context, I'm assuming you had some success, and so you had capital, but you're still helpless in a way.
Fortunately, I had success, and I had great business partners who were very supportive of me. I had to step out of the role of CEO and step into another role for the company because it just wasn't able to maintain that mental acuity to run a big organization. And anyways, that was a challenging time as well, but one that I knew was important. So I could seek this treatment because I couldn't be tied up with, the responsibilities of that. But yes, I was very fortunate that I had a lot of success to that point because I'm not sure what would have happened if I had to work really hard, and provide in that way that I think a lot of people do.
But also to that point of like, even having money doesn't solve some of the problems.
It doesn't, man. I would have paid $1 million to fix my problem, but I had to keep researching. And the silver lining in this terrible cloud of my life was someone had mentioned to me that there was a clinic in Provo. Okay. And I'm like, no, I've been to LA and New York and Texas and Phoenix. Like, there's a place in Provo that can solve this problem. Like, come on. I was still open to it. But when I found out the location was funded by Austin Collie, who had basically a career-ending concussion in the NFL, and there was a lot of research behind what they were doing, and it was sort of progressive and cutting edge, I thought, okay, well, I'll do anything, and went and enrolled in this 5-day treatment program that they were going to remap my brain at this place called Cognitive FX in Provo. So I dedicated myself to it. And the first day I got there, after the day of what they did to me, I was literally about ready to give up. I'm like, no one can do this. This is crazy. These treatments are, just insane. Like standing on a Bosun ball, juggling on your left foot and juggling something in your right hand and solving a math problem on the wall. It was very taxing mentally. And what they were trying to do was force my brain to behave the way it used to. Everything I was avoiding doing because my brain just was not firing correctly and sending the signals correctly. So what they were doing was basically forcing my brain to take these pathways again that were damaged. Second day was better. Third day was better. One of the treatments was, here's 25 face cards. They all had different pictures on them. You got 1 minute to look at them and memorize, see how many you can remember after I pull them all up. And the first day I was getting like 4 or 5, and I was just super frustrated with them. Like, no one can do this. This is crazy, And after day 5, I was getting all 25, and I was doing all these treatments well. And then they did another CAT scan on my exit day, and baseline was 0, let's say. That's where they want you to be. And I was at a -4 when I started, and I was back to 0. And I was like,
after 5 days.
5 days of just intense work, right? Yeah. So I'm thinking, okay, I was feeling good. I was feeling like better than myself even before. I was like, am I back? Like, truly, am I back? And this is where the helicopter comes into it. So I'm walking out the doors of this clinic in Provo, and I said to myself, what's the hardest thing I could possibly do to prove to myself that I'm back? Yeah. And that's what I'm like, well, I hear it becoming a helicopter pilot's really, really hard, and I've always wanted to do that. So I enrolled the next day, and a year later I got my license. And so every time I fly the helicopter, and not a lot of people know this, it's this kind of tribute to me rising above sort of this mental health issue. And every time I start that helicopter, I remember like I'm back.
Yeah.
So
that's an awesome story.
Anyways, that's the heli version of my mental health story. So,
and when you and I met the first time, you told me you had a helicopter or something, and you're like, yeah, I could take you and your kids out one day. And I was like, literally text you maybe an hour after only a phone call. And were you serious about that? And you're like, yeah. I was like, how about tomorrow? You took me and my kids out.
It was awesome.
And it was such a fun time. My kids, if you remember, they had their headsets in the back. We had our headsets in the front. And they were chanting, best day ever.
I remember.
Best day. And we're like, okay, it's been 3 minutes, shut up, kids. But they absolutely love that. Anyways, and what I'm getting at, one is thank you for sharing that talent, and what a cool, now hearing that backstory makes it even, I guess, more memorable for me and my kids knowing that we were a little part of that.
Well, and that's why my Instagram, is littered with flying helicopters, because truthfully, it is not only a passion, but it was an exit for me from a period of my life that I think, and we talk about mental health. We obviously know what it is, but there's, people struggle with it, and it's okay to talk about it and share. And especially if someone's going through a dark period, if you have resources and you have individuals that can support you in that. I mean, that's how
that you're not alone.
Yeah, you're definitely not alone.
It's normal to go through this. Like, there's millions of other people also going through this. And
yep.
Maybe if they found a solution, maybe I can too, right? I think you kind of get that hope.
Absolutely.
Have you gone back to that center?
I haven't, but I've sent a lot of people there.
It's that good. Yeah.
I mean, look, they've figured it out. And it makes sense. If your brain is damaged, imagine your brain's like a superhighway and has all these cities that these signals can go to. And this city is responsible for this emotion. And this city is responsible for this, function of the body. Yeah. And these signals get sent out. And if you get injured, in my case, I got injured, and some of those freeways were closed. So my brain was rerouting itself through another city, and that was causing problems in that city. And do you know what I mean? This is how I've learned to interpret it. But the brain can literally be reprogrammed, and they call that neuroplasticity. And really, what it highlights for me is if you are struggling emotionally or, with mindset, imagine how much easier it is to reprogram a brain that's healthy. It can be done.
Yeah.
it takes work, it takes practice. You have to sometimes force yourself to do things that you wouldn't normally want to do. And the idea being, yes, you can literally change your mindset. You can change how you think. You can change your beliefs. And I think learning that and experiencing that, now I can tell the story of, if you don't think you're good enough and you don't think you're successful and you talk to yourself a certain way, literally you can rechange and reformat your brain just like a computer. Thoughts are these fleeting things that bounce in and out of your head all day long, and they're just thoughts.
Where do you think thoughts come from?
Thoughts just come from daily interactions. They come from, what's happening in your life. Beliefs, on the other hand, are these deep-rooted, they're not like bouncy balls. They're like stuck in your brain, and they're very hard to root out. And a lot of people have beliefs about themselves that are very hard to root out. But if you have enough positive thoughts, you can break down that belief over time. And it might take 10,000 thoughts to break down a belief that you had, but people have and struggle with all these things all their lives. Entrepreneurs do. Will I be successful? Will I fail? I will fail. I can't do anything. You know what I mean? Like, you have to work through those things. And I think, answering your question from earlier, what separates people from others who are successful? They have this core belief that they can do anything. And that's truly, I look at everybody in my life that has mentored me or been successful. They are, never give up. They truly believe in what they're doing. They, do everything and anything to accomplish that. And whereas I think a lot of people give up, or they have beliefs that are just rooted in their brain. They can't do something, so they never try.
That's why I listen to that Business Wars, because I'm just like, no, every single business is on the teetering of failure. It's just, did you keep going, or did you not? Because everybody, nobody's blue skies the whole way. So you talked about success in business, and then overcoming adversity with concussions, and I'm sure there's other, anyways. And then now mentoring people as well. How would you relate those three, or even more than that, to joy and fulfillment? Like, what is giving you the most joy and fulfillment?
Well, for me, I've been in so many different areas of business, from, healthcare to entertainment to, real estate and so on. I just didn't realize I knew so much because I never was mentoring anybody. And then once I started, and accepted sort of this role at Limitless Society, I realized I had a lot to offer and share. And I'm getting a lot of joy and fulfillment out of sharing my experiences, my triumphs, my failures, and there's been a lot of them. I've had as many failures as I've had triumphs. So I feel like I'm kind of a cheat code for a lot of the members, like, hey, don't do this. Like, hey, I've done this. This was terrible. Hey, I've done this, and this was successful. And I'm getting a lot of joy and fulfillment out of doing that, something that I just didn't even know until I had the opportunity to be in this space.
And you did it for yourself, and
yeah.
If I'm hearing you right, you do it for yourself, and you get a level of joy and fulfillment, and then you use that knowledge and help somebody else instead of yourself, and it usually increases that.
Yeah, because I've been I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I've only been working for myself, and so now that I get to sort of share those values, share those experiences with other people, and then watch them be successful, it's very rewarding.
I bet.
Yeah.
What, did you ever feel like an imposter at times? Like,
absolutely.
Turning that corner?
Absolutely. But every teacher in the world should feel like an imposter, from one high school to another. But we're there's not enough mentors out there. No. And so that imposter syndrome that I think anybody would logically feel, you have to understand, like, you can change someone's life. You could be the one person that could, challenge someone to take a step in their life that they wouldn't do, or you could mentor them in such a way that they would actually, make decisions, change their thought processes, and probably in some ways they would surprise themselves about what they can do. And so that's that. I am getting a lot of joy and fulfillment out of that. Even standing in the Delta Center or in the Maverick Center and knowing, my gosh, we've got 10, 12 of the top level speakers coming to speak at our event, and we're going to influence probably, maybe 10,000 lives at one event. That's a pretty cool feeling. So
talk about taking and doing hard things and making it a reality, because you said that very intentionally about doing the helicopter, and whether it's like a small choice or a big choice, we live with regret or we don't. It's all the same emotion. And how do we conquer that, right?
Yeah, I think the main thing that people struggle with is just fear, like fear that they're going to fail. And you hear that all over, right? That's one of the singular reasons people decide not to leave that job and that paycheck to go and do something they know they can do, because they just fear, like, oh, what if I fail? And like I said earlier, I've failed as many times, if not more, in business than I've been successful. So that fear of failure, I mean, it exists and it's there, but you have to overcome that. And I think that truly that's what keeps people away from, even doing like what we've done here at Dirty Dough. Like, can we do this? Can we compete against another organization who's been really successful? Can we make a better mousetrap? Do you know what I mean? And if you don't have that mindset of that, being able to control that fear, even flying, like I didn't know if I was going to, I was like, I'm going to put myself to the test after getting out of that clinic. Like, can I do this? Obviously I had the fear that many times during that process of getting my license, like, am I going to be able to really do this? There's very stressful things that you have to learn to fly a helicopter. And many times, like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this, right? But you just keep going and going and going, and eventually those things become easier and easier and easier to accomplish. So I think fear is generally the one singular thing that keeps people from really, truly accomplishing their dreams.
And when you put that aside, what does that open up? Like, I see some of the people you take in the helicopter now, it's like, because you did that hard thing, what does that open up for you? And like,
well, even like Bennett, taking Bennett and his family, I'm surprised at, I love taking people. I love watching that first experience in there. And you could attribute that to anything in life, like, not just flying helicopters, but anything that someone gets to do for the first time. It's super rewarding to watch that. But I think I've influenced maybe another dozen or so pilots to, potential pilots to go and get their license. And one of them's Keaton, He's mentoring me on certain things, and I'm mentoring him on certain things. So it's kind of this fun play, give and take.
We already met without really realizing it, but you had flown Randy Garn to that speaking event in Moab.
That's right.
Met
I know, briefly there, yeah.
Because of that pilot opportunity.
Yeah.
Got you there with that anyways, and you spoke at the event really quick too.
Yeah, so I've just had a lot of opportunities because of that passion that I developed, because of something that I that I believed I could do after a challenging part of my life. So, yeah.
You talked about that fear, the fear of failure, which is, I agree with that. I just listened to something from Jordan Peterson. And just being an entrepreneur, that's always stress. It was a little relieving to hear this. And he said, I believe that, we have so much potential in our genetic code. And as you have these stressors, it unlocks that potential. Mm-hmm. And then it gives you, you could become so much better of a person, or more, better of a person, let's call it that, if you can unlock that genetic code. But you need those stressors to do that. Like, you needed the drive and the stressors of the concussion to then want to be a helicopter pilot.
Yeah.
And then you needed those stressors of becoming the helicopter pilot and knowing it's a hard thing to then, after achieving it, give you that confidence, like, oh, look what I did. Maybe there's more in me. Maybe there's more in me. I was like, sweet. Maybe I'm unlocking.
Well, I think
a few levels.
I think if I'm talking to anyone that isn't living in some amount of fear, you're not putting yourself in the situation you need to put yourself in to improve the quality of your life. You should be. I tell this all the time to members of Limitless Society. Sometimes you have to jump off a cliff and grow wings on the way down. You just have to. And you have to take that step, that leap of faith, and know that even starting a business is very hard. You're not going to know everything. You're not going to have all the mentoring and all the solutions to all the problems that you're going to face, but you still have to jump. Yeah. And you still have to have the confidence that you'll grow that set of wings on the way down, and you'll figure it out. And so I would say, if you're not putting yourself in a situation where if you're too comfortable in your life, you're probably not progressing. So that fear is a healthy thing.
It's not bad to have fear of failure. It's just, you just do it anyway. Be comfortable with the fear.
Right.
Live with the fear. and unlock that genetic code there.
Yeah, in essence, I think that's what Jordan Peterson was saying, right?
Yeah.
Like, our struggles are our greatest, teachers in life. The challenges we face are ultimately our greatest teachers.
I just thought it was a little cheesy when he's like, your genetic code, but I'm like, well, no, that is exactly what it is. Like, my genetic code probably most likely has the ability to fly a helicopter. But until I put myself under those stressors, I will never be able to unlock that. And I'm like, no, at a literal sense, it is genetic code.
Well, and I'll tell you, this is the example that the Keaton would use. He's terribly afraid of heights. Uh-huh. So why would you go fly a helicopter? Because in a helicopter, you feel heights more than you do in an airplane, for sure.
For sure, yeah.
And so, that's a fear he had to overcome and is still overcoming. His fear of heights is not like, it's not gone, right? Yeah, what a baby.
I'll do this.
But, and that was maybe written in his DNA.
Yeah.
That he had that fear of heights. I don't have that. I get up, I get somewhere high, and I on a bridge, and my first inclination is to jump, and this is a weird thing that some people have. Like, I see myself jumping off, not fearing the heights. So, anyways, it's just, fear is one of the, it's one of the greatest things, and it can be the worst thing that can keep you from accomplishing your dreams. So
how can people acknowledge fear?
Yeah. Well, I think you have to be aware of what you're feeling, and you also have to be aware that, that you can't control everything either. We're sitting here right now, earthquake could happen. Am I going to sit here and stress about an earthquake happening? You know what I mean? Like, there's some things you can't control. So you have to step outside of that fear, and you have to be able to acknowledge it and then also wrangle it. Cause it's we all have it. We all have it. And to some degree, some of us have it more than others.
Okay, last question for you, Ryan. What do you want to be remembered by? What's the legacy you want to leave behind?
Well, if you asked me that 10 years ago, it would probably be different. Today, it's, that people can come back from hard things. You can have very challenging life experience, and a lot of people do. I don't know anybody that's absent of challenges in their life, health, financial, emotional, spiritual, mental, whatever. But I am sitting here today because I worked through a very, very challenging part of my life that I at many times felt like I couldn't get through. And so to be remembered by, that you can really get through really tough times in your life, especially mentally, is, I'm walking proof of it. Every time I fly that helicopter, it's my tribute to overcoming something very, very challenging in my life.
Cool. I
love it. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah,
this has been great. How can listeners connect with you?
Oh, well, Racefly is my Instagram, RACEFLY. If you're interested in hearing more about the event we have going on March 23rd at the Maverick or September 23rd at the Maverick Center, it's thelimitlessarena.com. You can get your tickets there. We'd love to have you.
Oh, that's gonna be fun.
So cool.
Yep.
Okay.
So cool.
Okay, thanks.
Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.